Hi, folks, with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about or unpack some of the stuff raised in what I think is a TikTok video, viral video of a youngish woman, I assume mid to late 20s, getting fired from some IT cloud, software type outfit. So she's, as I understand it, they let her know she was getting fired. She's certainly well prepared for it, and she didn't really seem that surprised. And the guy, whoever it was, I assume somebody from HR who was telling her she fired, didn't handle it very well, and I thought she was how dare you hold me accountable type attitude, which you see a lot in younger people today, especially women and minorities. So I just want to talk more widely about this now. Given that I get around in business and going to see a lot of clients and on clients' offices and work sites and so on, the only people you can fire these days are straight white males. You can fire straight white males without a reason, and a lot of straight white males get fired for reasons like they make incompetent minority people who've been hired for affirmative action, makes them feel uncomfortable. So, and constantly when I go out to see to the client, and there's a guy there, Billy Bob, straight white male, and he was I thought he was pretty good, smart guy, knew his stuff, and as far as I could tell, doing quite a good job. But you go back a few weeks later, and he's gone, and I'd sit down, and I'm always interested in these sort of things, so I try and sort of get it out of the CEO. Well, why did you fire this guy? Was there a reason for it? Like the guy was arriving late all the time, or arriving drunk, or was arriving, so scruffy that he was unpresentable, or was refusing to accept direction, or was, grabbing the ass of the female employees or something. What was he doing? Was he just useless? Did he fuck everything up he touched? That type of thing. So was there a reason for it? Now, I can't think of one on top of my head over the last few years where any straight white male that's been fired has been fired for a reason, especially not at the more executive levels. Like maybe it is with people, I don't know, sweeping the floor or something. But and the sort of conversations that I have with these CEOs, often who are straight white males themselves, they may be simps, and they may be just flunkies and stooges installed by their BlackRock type masters or something like that, and that is quite prevalent, by the way. But and they're also caught up in this climate change and affirmative action. They believe in them, or pretend to believe in them, given that's probably the only reason why they get and keep a job. But these CEOs, no, Billy Bob, he was a good worker. No, he was, and they can't list a single thing that Billy Bob did as a cause or a reason for getting fired. And so I try and press the issue without looking like I'm sort of really searching or digging, but because you're not to clam up, when you talk. So, look, yeah, he just didn't, we let him go because I don't know, he just didn't kind of fit in, and like I had a complaint from the black lesbian who said that Billy Bob is really good at his job, and he just makes her, the black lesbian, feel like an idiot, and and this sort of thing. I don't know. It just didn't feel right having Billy Bob around. Yeah, that's how I would phrase it. It just didn't feel right, and that would be the reason for firing these guys. Now, these aren't guys who are on bullshit salaries. We're talking 250,000 plus type salaries here, and yet they can be dismissed for I don't know. It just doesn't feel right. But no reason. They'll even say that Billy Bob was doing a good job. He arrives on time, he's well dressed, he's courteous, he's respectful, he doesn't grab any female employees' asses, he doesn't make trouble, he accepts direction, he does as he's told, he does his job and does it well. And that is, you've got the straight white guy that ticks every box for a desirable employee, but they still get rid of him. Now, let's look on the other side of it, where they've decided that the logistics manager for a certain district has to be, they've decided, affirmative action, they've decided has to be, the proverbial black lesbian, and they've decided that's how it has to be. They can't find a black lesbian with the appropriate qualifications. So they look past every shortcoming, a bad attitude, refusal to accept direction, aggressive dealing with other staff, and they look past all of that. Somebody wouldn't pass an interview with that sort of attitude; you just wouldn't get through. But this black lady that high, now, not only was she not qualified, and they put her into the job, and she managed to. It's hard to believe someone could fuck it up as much as she did. But she refused to accept direction. So her boss said, "Well, no, don't do it that way. Do it this way," and is trying to take corrective action. But she's determined, because by doing what she wants to do, she's showing that the white patriarchy isn't going to, racist patriarchy isn't going to show her or tell her what to do. So she's refusing to accept direction, doesn't know what she's doing, willfully fucking things up, because that'll show the patriarchy, and then does things like comes in late, takes an extra long lunch hour, just decides to goof off for the afternoon. I don't feel like working. But she doesn't get fired. The black lesbian does not get fired for the clearest and most pronounced transgressions that should cause anyone who's doing that to be fired, summarily almost. So now surely HR would say, look, Shaniqua, you've only been here a month. You've only been here working 20 days, and you've arrived late on 10 of those days, goofed off for 3 of them for the afternoon without telling anybody, and you've told all of your colleagues to get fucked 10 times over. Like all of these sort of things. So you're doing a lousy job. You're fucking everything up. And you'd think HR would be recording these things so they could be easily done. But in the affirmative action world, this sort of thing is accepted. You accept these people can't do the job and won't do the job well, and also not interested in doing the job well. You think if they'd been gifted an affirmative action job without the qualifications, that they would go, wow, this is a great opportunity. I'm really going to learn everything I can about logistics and freight and really try and do a good job. And they don't think that way. That's not how these affirmative action people do. Some must, I suppose, but that's not how they think. They think that, well, if I've been given the job, that just shows how much I'm entitled to and how much I've been denied and deprived in the past. So I'm entitled to a job I'm not qualified to do, so I'm now entitled to keep that job, even though I'm unqualified and I'm not even going to do my best to do a good job. Those people are not getting fired. And I go back, and some of the HR and DEI people, they're so bristling with anger and so on, because they've been brainwashed into Nazis were everywhere, all straight white males, Hitler and all this, bristling with this anger and their children playing doll's house. If it was up to me, I'd fire all of them. There wouldn't be anybody left. Now, I've had to fire people in the past. I've been fired in the past. I've had to fire people in the past, and I've always took a response. I thought it was, in my view at least, a responsibility to say, well, this is why. Now, pretty much anybody who's getting fired, unless it's like a retrenchment or the company's going under or something. But anyone's going, they know why they're getting fired, and so it's almost a formality, I suppose, to go through it. Now, but my view was it must be for hard factual reasons. You can't just fire somebody because you don't like them. There are some people, not mostly women, but some men too, that were just incredibly devious and deceitful. So it's very hard to nail something down on them to say, hey, you're fired for that. But typically those people were not good performers. So you could always go there. But say in the case of for example, say in the case of salespeople, the salespeople have all got a budget of $100 a year, just round numbers here, $100 a year selling widgets, and some of them don't make the numbers. Some of them exceed their numbers. Some of them do more than 100. Some do less. Now, I take a broader view. This is when I was like VP of Sales and Marketing. I think in a particular company, I take a broader view because some people have got a really tough territory, and you don't expect them to maybe do quite as well as someone who's got, on a relative basis, at least an easy territory. So I tended not to penalise. So the guy may only get $85 of his budget, but because he had a tough territory, I didn't want to say, no, I don't want to fire you for that, because it's just much harder work with the gig you've got. So there can be various reasons why there's under and over performance. Some sales guys were very extremely diligent, and they'd be in first thing in the morning making their calls, and they'd be out, knocking on the doors and, beating the bushes and pounding the pavements and all that sort of stuff, and working, slipping down the sidewalks and so on. And they were the ones that tended to do better because they were working much harder at it. Some would work hard, but they weren't really that good. And, they would panic at the wrong, their timing was off. And so I try and sit down and counsel them and work through it. And as long as somebody was approachable and teachable, then that was kind of fine. But there were people that were, I'm thinking of one sales guy now who's, again, he's always arriving late and goofing off. And he would decide that instead of going to make sales calls, he'd go down to the beach and just hope that it wouldn't get noticed. And so you'd say, okay, well, look, you're falling well short on your numbers and you're not putting in the work. So, it's inevitable that this is not going to work out, and inevitable that you're going to, be shown the door at some point. And they'd always say, well, I thought, sometimes people would be, they were lazy and useless, but they'd say they were going to mend their ways. Oh yeah, boss, I'll fix this and I'll come back at a million miles an hour. But it didn't look like it. But I always sort of wanted to give that extra chance to say, well, now when you're not performing, you tend to lose certain freedoms. For example, if somebody's not performing, this is like sales guys again. If someone's not performing, normally you'd have like a meeting once a week, once a fortnight, or they'd hand in a report and that type of stuff. But when someone's not performing, then they attract more interest because you've either got to get them to perform or you've got to fire them. You've got one or the other. But I was willing to put the time in. But the primary point here is that never fire somebody for reasons that you can't clearly identify. If it's just because you don't like their attitude, counsel them on the attitude, or because you just don't like, I don't know, the way they have their hair or the color of the clothes they wear. Don't make it personal. Keep it on the facts. If they're not performing, they're not performing. Make their performance targets and KPIs quite clear and make them reasonable, and listen to them. They come back and say, well, that KPI that I've got to climb, the mountain 100 times every second. That's unreasonable. I can't do that. You have to look at it and say, well, yeah, actually that is unreasonable. Let's change that, and so on. So now, keeping it to the facts means you keep it impersonal. People are being fired for hard factual reasons that they know are clear, are clear. Now, if you fire a straight white male for those, that's okay. But if you hire and this is the same in Australia, I'm sure it is in the US and elsewhere, if you fire the proverbial black lesbian for performance, then you can still be sued. You didn't try hard enough to support them. You didn't give them enough extra training. You didn't give them enough counselling. You didn't give them enough warnings. You didn't give them enough support. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. So there'll be a million things that can come at you that, given they're a minority, they're entitled to a gazillion times more support than the straight white male is, but they're also allowed to not perform for almost an indefinite period of time. They don't have to do their jobs for an indefinite period of time. And so firing them is close to impossible. There's a company that hired a gay guy who decided to become transgender. So you're a transgender gay guy. And so you get this guy, he calls himself Jade or something like that. And he goes around in women's clothing and wearing makeup and that sort of stuff, and just refuses to do his job. He comes into work, but just sits there and won't do anything because he claims he's discriminated against, or there's been someone said something racist to him, or said something transphobic, or this, or he's always been slighted in some way, and that means he doesn't have to do his job. So they're so terrified of firing him because it'd be, in their view, they'd be up for lawsuits, and they've had legal advice saying, no, don't fire him, just stick him in a corner, keep him out of the way so he can't be disruptive to anything else, and just pay him. So this guy's sitting there doing nothing, collecting a salary. It's not a big salary, but collecting a salary for doing nothing. Now, anyone else would get fired. Any straight white male would get fired on the fucking spot. But because of this, that he's got the gay and the transgender thing, and he's a quarter, obviously some black or brown race, like he's a quarter, so he can play all the cards. He'll have a job there forever, and they won't fire him. So we need to understand the difference between holding white people to account and the ability to hold minorities to account. And I had to fire a black guy some years ago because he was goofing off, coming in late, not being ready, not doing his work, and he had this thing with his wife, who was really hot looking, by the way, white girl. He had this thing with his wife, and that he thought she was having a relationship with another man. So he would always be rushing off from work to spy on her, wherever her workplace was, to spy on her on the basis that she was having a relationship with some other guy, and he would spend hours on that. And he was unapologetic. Oh no, I can do. I'm allowed to do that. That's not a problem. Why are you trying to hold me accountable for that? And so the concept of accountability is very different. As soon as you move away from straight white males, well, with some exceptions, of course. So straight white males accept accountability. They accept that they'll be hired on merit, that they'll pass exams based on merit, which means that they're all called Nazis, of course. But they accept that that they'll be held to account for performance. But straight white males aren't anymore. They're being fired for purely ideological, nothing to do with their performance or lack of it. Let's come to this girl now in the TikTok video. Got fired from Cloudflare, or one of the sort of cloud software type outfits. Now we don't have the backstory here, but she's been employed there for 3 or 4 months. Part of that was like Christmas, New Year, so you wouldn't expect a whole lot of business to go down during that time. But she's saying that she's got a 3-month ramp up, becoming accustomed to the product and the customer, what's required, and levels of service, and the all the sort of bits that you have to kind of become acclimatized to when you start a new job. She's saying she's on ramp up, and then they fire her for lack of performance. Now, she hasn't closed any business in 3 months, and the product isn't big ticket. It doesn't cost $1 gazillion and have to be rolled into budgets many years into the future. So it's not a long selling cycle in the industry parlance. But so it's the sort of stuff that people would, at the price point, a few $100, is the sort of stuff that people would buy fairly quickly and would just come out of a recurring revenue budget in most cases, especially as they're probably switching from one to the other, one supplier to another. So the latitude is clearly there to close business. But she hasn't closed any business in that time. Now, as a new sales rep, I don't know, did she come from another, things we don't know, did she come from another company that was selling that sort of product? Did she claim to be knowledgeable in the product and have some sort of a contact list that she could approach and sell? Did she make those claims at the interview? Did they hire her for those reasons? She's a little bit swarthy, so I'm wondering if maybe she's got a bit of Hispanic in her. But otherwise, she appears to be a straight white female. So why did they hire somebody? Were they in a rush? Did they, how many applicants did they have? Are they paying shit money and couldn't get anybody anyway? Is she on a commission plan of some sort on sales? I don't know. But she had now the quality of the leads that were given to her. Were they good quality leads from people that were, gagging to spend money? Were they crap leads? From the sound of the video that she's talking, she only had 3 decent prospects, or all of them either have yet to make a decision or all fell over. It sounds like they fell over, but and why wasn't she counselling this previously? Why aren't her, like, the sales manager or the supervisor or someone saying to her, look, Brittany, you seem to have the right stuff, but really you need to say this or do that. Coach her to become a more successful salesperson. It's worth the time. I always thought anyway, it's worth the time. Sometimes you can turn people around from being quite ordinary performers just because they don't really understand the mechanics of it, and get them to be much more successful. It's worth putting the time into that rather than go through the aggravation of constantly hiring and firing people. So, work with, assuming it's possible, work with what you've got and try and improve that. I always thought that was the better investment. Now, in terms of her attitude, she's rather a snotty, sort of pushy type of chick. The HR guy who sounds gay, and he's talking to her and saying that we're going to let you go and everything. And he starts the explanation saying it's performance related, and she shoots back, "No, just stop right there, or just stop there." Now that's a sort of thing you say to somebody where you're the boss and they're the junior, they're the trainee. Just stop right there. And that's I wouldn't talk to somebody that way. Unless they were being particularly brutish and aggressive to me, I suppose. But otherwise, I just wouldn't talk to somebody like that. Is she talking to the customers that way? The customers are saying, well, I'm not so sure about the price. Just stop right there. That would alienate any customer. So maybe she's got a coarse, vulgar, aggressive manner that turns off the customers. But that should come out with coaching. That should say, hey, really, you're energetic and you're motivated, but you need to lose some of these rough edges, and I'd like to show you how. That would be a way to go. But anyway, there the days when people would say, "Why are you getting fired?" are gone, because there used to be, certainly in my courses, used to be you got fired for clear reasons. Clear reasons. Here's your employment contract. You start work at 9 and finish at 5. If you constantly turn up at 10 or 11 in the morning when your contract says to turn up at 9, they can fire you for factual, hard facts. But that's changed now because of affirmative action and all these sorts of things. People aren't being fired for factual reasons. Certainly the straight white males that I come across, I don't think any of them are fired for factual reasons. It's always for, it doesn't feel right. I mean, what sort of fucking reason is that to fire somebody? But if it is factual, again, you're tardy, or you're not making the numbers, or whatever it might be, sure. If you've made an effort to correct that and coach people, of course you fire them. There's nothing wrong with that either. But that whole idea of firing people for actual reasons and performance targets, this sort of thing, that's merit. That implies merit, and merit's gone out the window. It doesn't exist anymore. So you can fire people for any reason, or no reason, or an invented reason. Coming back to Brittany and in the thing, that I think she's got a valid argument, saying, well, look, I've only been here 3 months, and then I haven't closed any business. Now, if every other, if there are a number of new people that got hired sort of, around that time, and they all were closing business, then, and that should come out. The guy is saying, well, look, There are 10 sales representatives, for example, there are 10 sales representatives got hired at around the same time as you, and they've all closed a lot of business, or $1 million, or 5 cents worth, or whatever. If they've closed a lot of business, but you haven't closed any. So on that basis, and on the basis of performance, so we're going to let you go. That would have been fine, but they got all wishy-washy. They weren't clear on that. It's performance, and she said, "Well, what are you talking about? Performance? I've only been here 3 months. I mean, what sort of?" Now there may have been a performance clause in a contract that at the end of 3 months she's supposed to have sold X amount of stuff. But again, that's what they should have said. These were the terms of your employment. So I don't sort of know the backstory. Why did they hire her? Did she come from the same industry? There are things there that would feed into it. But what seems obvious to me is they made no attempt to help her be successful. And if that's my understanding, at least from the bit that I've seen in the TikTok video. So on that basis, I would say as an employer, they failed in their I would assert their duty there. If you've already hired someone, they're already there, you've already got them, they're already learning about the program. Coach them, make them successful, assuming you can. Some people have got such a shitty attitude and refuse to accept direction and won't be told, and that sort of thing. So consider that too. But she didn't strike me as that. A snotty attitude, sure, but one that probably could be got her. She's angry and defensive because she's getting fired. She may not be that way all the time. I suspect that just stop right there thing is a type of vulgarity in her manner that probably does turn off sales prospects. But then again, you coach that out of her. And if she refuses to accept, then you fire her for that. But that's sort of my overview on the whole thing. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.